The champagne glass in my hand was still half full when my father stood up at the rehearsal dinner and announced he was canceling my wedding. Not postponing, canceling. The room fell silent. 40 guests frozen mid-conversation, forks suspended over plates of expensive salmon that my father had, apparently, decided he no longer wanted to pay for. I watched him from across the table, standing there in his custom suit, his face arranged in that expression of benevolent authority he'd perfected over 30 years of running his own company, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not shock, not hurt, not even anger. Just a calm, crystalline clarity that told me this moment had been inevitable, and that I'd been preparing for it longer than he could possibly imagine. "I'm sorry to do this here," he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "But I've given this a lot of thought, and I can't in good conscience spend $80,000 on a wedding when Alexandria hasn't even proven she can hold down a job for more than 6 months. This is supposed to be a celebration of responsibility and commitment, and frankly, I don't see evidence of either." My fiancé, my beautiful, brilliant fiancé Cameron, reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back gently, a signal that I was fine, that everything was going according to plan. Because here's what my father didn't know. I'd been expecting this for exactly 42 days. Ever since I'd overheard him on the phone with his accountant, discussing how to pull funding from my wedding without looking like the bad guy. Ever since I'd realized that my father, the man who'd raised me to be independent and strong, couldn't stand that I'd chosen someone he didn't respect, someone who threatened his vision of what my life should look like. "Dad," I said calmly, setting down my champagne with deliberate care. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. Years of dealing with his manipulation had taught me perfect control. "Can we discuss this privately?" "There's nothing to discuss. I've made my decision. You're 28 years old, Alexandria. If you want to get married, you can pay for it yourself. Maybe that will teach you something about the value of money and hard work." The irony was exquisite. The man who'd built his wealth by stepping on smaller competitors, who'd never missed an opportunity to flaunt his success, was lecturing me about the value of money. The man who'd paid for my brother's wedding 3 years ago without blinking, a $100,000 extravaganza, was suddenly concerned about fiscal responsibility. But we both knew this wasn't about money. This was about control. About the fact that I'd chosen Cameron, an artist, a free spirit. Someone who made me laugh and challenged my father's rigid worldview, instead of the corporate lawyer or investment banker he'd always envisioned for me. "I understand," I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat. Around us, guests were starting to murmur, some trying to pretend they hadn't heard, others watching with the horrified fascination of people witnessing a car crash. My mother sat frozen beside my father, her face pale, saying nothing as usual. My brother smirked into his wine glass. Cameron's hand tightened on mine. "Alexandria." "It's fine," I interrupted gently. "Really, it's fine." My father looked almost disappointed by my reaction. He'd wanted tears, begging, a scene that would justify his decision and prove I was as emotionally immature as he claimed. Instead, I stood up gracefully, smoothing my dress. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said to the room. "I apologize for the confusion. Please, enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's already paid for." I smiled sweetly at my father. "That much is covered, right, Dad?" He nodded stiffly, clearly uncertain why I was being so accommodating. "Good. Then please, everyone stay. Celebrate." After all, we wouldn't want to waste money. I walked out of the restaurant with Cameron beside me, my head high, my pace measured. We didn't speak until we reached his car in the parking lot. Only then did I let out a long, slow breath. "You knew," Cameron said. "It wasn't a question. I've known for 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Alex, why didn't you tell me?" because I needed you to react authentically. I needed everyone in that room to see genuine shock and hurt from you. From me. They needed to see control. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app, and I needed him to say it publicly, in front of witnesses, in a way that couldn't be denied or rewritten later. Cameron stared at me. You recorded that? I've been recording everything for 6 weeks. Every conversation, every text message, every email. Building a case. I looked up at him, and for the first time that evening, I let him see what I'd been hiding behind the calm facade. Not hurt, but determination. Cold, focused determination. My father thinks he's teaching me a lesson about money and independence. What he doesn't know is that I'm about to teach him one about consequences. What are you going to do? Something he should have seen coming, if he'd ever actually paid attention to who I am, instead of who he wanted me to be. I slipped my phone back into my purse. But first, we're going to finish planning our wedding, because we're still getting married, Cameron. Just not the way my father expected. Not the way anyone expected. I don't understand. You will. Trust me, you will. I kissed him softly. The wedding is still on. The venue is still booked. The guests are still invited. And my father is still going to pay for every penny of it. He just doesn't know it yet. How? I smiled then, really smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Because 6 weeks ago, when I first heard him planning this, I didn't cry or panic or try to change his mind. Instead, I went to see his lawyer. The same lawyer who drew up the trust fund my grandmother left me. The trust fund my father has been managing since I was 18. The trust fund that, according to the original documents, includes a specific provision for wedding expenses. Cameron's eyes widened. He told you there was no money in that trust. He lied. There's $300,000 in that trust, and my grandmother's will explicitly states that up to $100,000 can be used for my wedding. My father's been managing it for 10 years, telling me it was depleted by my college expenses. But I have the original documents now. I have bank statements. I have proof that he's been lying about the trust to maintain control over me. Alex, so yes, we're having our wedding. And yes, he's paying for it. Because if he doesn't, I'm going to expose him for what he's been doing. Not just to me, but in his business dealings. See, when I went to see his lawyer, I made a friend in his office, a paralegal who's been watching my father commit financial improprieties for years and couldn't say anything because she needed her job. But when I told her what he was doing with my trust, she found her courage. She gave me copies of documents that show a pattern of behavior. Documents that, if they became public, would destroy his reputation and possibly his business. Cameron was silent for a long moment. You've been planning this for 6 weeks? I've been planning this for 6 weeks, waiting for him to do exactly what he did tonight, giving him enough rope to hang himself. I leaned against the car, suddenly tired. He thought he was punishing me, teaching me a lesson, showing everyone that his daughter isn't responsible enough for a big wedding. But all he did was prove that he's willing to publicly humiliate me, that he values control over his children's happiness, and that he's been lying about money for a decade. And now? Now he's going to have a choice. Release the trust funds as my grandmother intended and pay for this wedding with dignity. Or refuse, and I'll release everything I have to the media, to his business partners, to his investors. I'll destroy the reputation he's spent 30 years building. And either way, I'm getting married to you. Either way, I'm done letting him control my life. Cameron pulled me close, and I let myself lean into him. Let myself be vulnerable for just a moment. He's going to fight you. Let him. I'm ready. What if you lose? What if he manages to block the trust somehow, and the documents aren't enough to pressure him? Then we have a courthouse wedding, and I walk away from my entire family. I'll lose my inheritance, my father, possibly my mother and brother too. But I'll still have you. I'll still have my integrity, and I'll still have my freedom from him. I pulled back to look Cameron in the eye. I'm prepared to lose everything except you. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for anything as long as we're together. Good, because this is going to get ugly before it gets better. We drove home in comfortable silence, and I spent the entire ride thinking about the next steps. Tomorrow, I'd call my father and offer him the choice: pay for the wedding using my grandmother's trust as intended, or face exposure. I'd give him 48 hours to decide. And then, regardless of his choice, I'd start building my life on my own terms, with my own money and my own family, the family I was choosing, not the one I'd been born into. My father had spent my entire life teaching me to be strategic, to be tough, to be uncompromising in pursuit of my goals. He just never imagined I'd use those lessons against him. That was his mistake, and I was about to make him pay for it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Cameron, spreading out every document I'd collected over the past 6 weeks. Bank statements showing the trust fund balance, copies of my grandmother's will, highlighting the clause about wedding expenses, the original trust documents my father had never shown me, and finally, the crown jewel, 3 manila folders full of evidence that my father had been playing fast and loose with business ethics for years. Walk me through this again, Cameron said, pouring his third cup of coffee at 2 a.m. I want to make sure I understand everything. Okay. I pulled the trust documents toward me. When my grandmother died 10 years ago, she left me $300,000 in a trust. The terms were specific. I could access it at age 25 for any reasonable expense, or earlier for education or wedding costs up to $100,000. My father was named as trustee until I turned 25, which was 3 years ago. Exactly. I should have gotten full control of the trust when I turned 25. But Dad told me there was nothing left, that it had all been used for my college education. I believed him, because why wouldn't I? He's my father. I trusted him. Cameron shook his head. But he was lying. He was lying. The trust currently has $287,000 in it. He used maybe $13,000 for my college expenses. I had scholarships, remember? The rest has just been sitting there, growing, under his control. When I turned 25, he should have transferred it to me. Instead, he just kept lying. How did you find out? I got suspicious 6 months ago when he seemed overly invested in my relationship with you. He kept making comments about how I should think carefully about marriage, how I should wait, how I wasn't financially ready. At first, I thought he just didn't like you, which he doesn't. I agreed. But it seemed like more than that. It felt like he was stalling. So I started digging. I requested documents from my grandmother's estate lawyer. That's when I found out about the trust and its actual balance. Cameron whistled low. He must have panicked when you started asking questions. I didn't ask questions. That's the thing. I didn't confront him. I just quietly gathered information. I requested bank statements through the trust company. I got copies of everything from my grandmother's lawyer. I built a complete picture of the trust before he even knew I was looking. Smart. Necessary. If I'd confronted him early, he would have had time to hide things, to manufacture explanations. This way, I have everything documented before he knew to cover his tracks. I pulled another folder toward me. But the trust is just part of it. The real leverage is this. Cameron opened the folder and started reading. I watched his expression shift from curiosity to shock to something like disgust. Alex, this is evidence of tax evasion, environmental violations, and harassment settlements hidden as consulting fees. Yes, I know. Where did you get this? Remember I mentioned a paralegal at my father's lawyer's office? Her name is Isabel. She's worked there for 8 years, and she's been quietly documenting my father's ethical violations for most of that time. She couldn't report it herself. She needs the job, and my father's lawyer would destroy her career if she went against a major client. But when I came to her about the trust, She saw an opportunity. This could ruin him. That's the point. He thinks he holds all the cards because he has money and I don't. What he doesn't realize is that I hold the one card that actually matters: the truth. His reputation is everything to him. His business, his standing in the community, his legacy. If this gets out, he loses all of it. Cameron was quiet for a moment, reading through the documents. You're really going to blackmail your own father? It's not blackmail if I'm just asking him to release money that's legally mine. The trust belongs to me. My grandmother left it to me. He's been withholding it for 3 years. All I'm doing is giving him a choice. Release it voluntarily, or I'll release information that happens to be true. That's not blackmail. That's consequences. He's not going to see it that way. I don't care how he sees it. I'm done caring what he thinks. I gathered the documents back into neat piles. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to call him. I'm going to lay out exactly what I know and what I have. I'm going to give him 48 hours to transfer control of the trust to me and to apologize publicly for tonight's scene. If he does that, this all ends quietly. If he doesn't, I start making phone calls to journalists, business partners, and regulatory agencies. And if he calls your bluff, it's not a bluff. I will absolutely do it. I've already drafted the emails. I've already identified which reporters to send the documents to. I've already prepared everything. If he forces my hand, I'm ready. Cameron reached across the table and took my hands. I love you. You know that, right? And I'll support whatever you decide. But Alex, once you do this, there's no going back. If you expose him, your relationship with your father is over. Probably your relationship with your whole family. I know. I felt the weight of that reality settle over me. I've thought about it constantly for 6 weeks. Every day I wake up and ask myself, is this worth it? Is destroying my relationship with my father worth having the wedding I want and the money that's rightfully mine? And your answer? My answer is that he already destroyed our relationship. He did that tonight when he humiliated me in front of 40 people to prove a point. He did it 3 years ago when he lied about the trust. He did it my entire childhood when he made his love conditional on me meeting his expectations. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to pretend anymore. We went to bed around 3 a.m., but I still couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the phone call I'd make in a few hours, about the choice I was forcing my father to make, about the life I was about to claim for myself. At 7 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got up. Cameron was still dozing, so I moved quietly to the living room and sat with my phone, rehearsing what I'd say. I needed to be clear, firm, and unemotional. I couldn't let him goad me into anger or guilt. This was business, pure and simple. At 9 a.m., I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. Alexandria. Dad, we need to talk. If this is about last night, I'm not changing my mind. You need to learn. I'm not calling to beg, I interrupted. I'm calling to inform you of some facts. Can you listen for 5 minutes without interrupting? Silence. Then, fine. Good. First fact. Grandmother left me a trust worth $300,000. The trust documents specify that up to $100,000 can be used for wedding expenses before I turn 25, and that I get full control of the trust at 25 regardless. I turned 25 3 years ago. Dad, where's my money? More silence, longer this time. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to figure out how I'd learned about the trust. You told me that money was gone, I continued. You said it had been depleted by my college expenses, but I have bank statements from the trust company showing a current balance of $287,000. You lied to me. For 3 years, you've been lying to me about money that's legally mine. That's not, don't. I have documentation. I have the original trust documents. I have bank statements. I have everything. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer control of that trust to me today. You're going to release $100,000 for my wedding expenses. And you're going to apologize publicly for last night's scene, a simple statement that you spoke hastily and that you're proud to support your daughter's marriage. Absolutely not. I'm not finished. If you refuse, I will release certain documents to the media. Documents concerning your business practices over the past decade, tax issues, environmental violations, sexual harassment settlements that were disguised as consulting fees. I have everything, Dad. Signed statements, financial records, witness testimony. If you force me to, I will destroy your reputation completely. The silence that followed was different, heavier, dangerous. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. That's blackmail. No, it's consequences. You can release my money voluntarily, or you can refuse and face the results of your own actions. Your choice. Where did you get those documents? Doesn't matter. I have them, they're legitimate, and I'm prepared to use them. You have 48 hours to decide. Transfer the trust and apologize, or I start making calls. Those are your options. You're making a mistake. No, Dad, you made the mistake. Last night when you tried to humiliate me. 3 years ago when you started lying about my trust. 10 years ago when you decided your control was more important than your children's autonomy. I'm just done pretending those mistakes don't have consequences. Alexandria, 48 hours. Think carefully. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. I'd done it. I'd actually threatened my own father, leveraged his secrets against him, drawn a line he couldn't cross without losing everything. Cameron emerged from the bedroom, clearly awakened by my voice. How did it go? He's angry. He tried to deny it, then tried to turn it around on me. But I laid out everything I have. Now we wait and see what he chooses. What do you think he'll do? Honestly, I don't know. The smart play is to give me what I want and cut his losses. But my father isn't always smart. He's proud. And pride makes people do stupid things. What's our backup plan if he refuses? Then I release everything and we have a courthouse wedding. We'll be fine financially. I have a good job. You're getting steady commissions for your art. We don't need his money. I just want what's mine, and I want him to face consequences for lying. And if he goes to war, if he tries to destroy you professionally or socially, I smiled grimly. Then we fight. But he'll lose that war, Cameron, because I have the truth on my side, and he has nothing but lies and bluster. Truth wins eventually. It always does. We spent the rest of the day in strange limbo, waiting for my father's response. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. Part of me wondered if he was consulting lawyers, trying to figure out if my threats were real or if he could somehow block me. Another part wondered if he was just stewing in anger, plotting his own revenge. By evening, I still hadn't heard from him. But I had heard from my mother. 3 missed calls and a text. Please call me. We need to talk about this situation. I didn't call back. My mother had sat silent last night while my father humiliated me. She'd chosen his side without a word of protest. Whatever she had to say now, I wasn't interested in hearing it. Instead, Cameron and I had dinner and tried to pretend our lives weren't balanced on the edge of a knife. We talked about our wedding plans, about the venue we'd chosen, about the life we wanted to build together. We talked about everything, except the reality that in 48 hours, everything might explode. At 11 p.m., my phone finally rang. My father. I need to see you, he said without preamble. Tomorrow, noon. My office. We can meet, but not at your office. Neutral territory. The coffee shop on 5th Street. Alexandria. Noon tomorrow at the coffee shop, or this conversation ends and the timer starts running. He was silent for a long moment. Fine. Noon at the coffee shop. He hung up without saying goodbye. Cameron looked at me questioningly. Meeting tomorrow? Meeting tomorrow. Noon. Public place where he can't intimidate me or control the environment. I took a deep breath. This is it. Tomorrow he either agrees to my terms or I start burning bridges. Are you ready? I've been ready for 6 weeks. Tomorrow we find out if all that preparation was worth it. That night, I finally slept. Not because I was calm, but because I was too exhausted to stay awake. And in my dreams, I saw my father's face as I told him the truth about who I was and what I was capable of. In my dreams, he finally understood that I wasn't the compliant daughter he'd raised. I was something else entirely. Something he'd created, but couldn't control. And that terrified him. As it should. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, claiming a table by the window where we'd be visible to everyone passing by. Public accountability was my friend. My father wouldn't risk making a scene where his business associates might see. I ordered a tea I didn't drink and watched the door, my heart beating steadily despite the stakes. He arrived exactly at noon, punctual as always, wearing his power suit like armor. But I noticed things I might have missed before. The tension in his jaw, the way his eyes swept the room calculating who might be watching, the slight stiffness in his shoulders that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. Good. Let him be uncomfortable. He sat across from me without ordering anything, folding his hands on the table in that negotiating posture I'd seen him use in business meetings. Alexandria, Dad, I've thought about what you said yesterday. I've consulted with my lawyers, and they tell me that if you release those documents, you could be charged with theft of proprietary business information. Isabel could lose her job and face legal consequences. You could both be sued. Is that your answer? Legal threats? I'm telling you the reality of the situation. Then let me tell you a reality. I don't care. Sue me if you want. I'll countersue for the trust funds you've been withholding. We'll both end up in court, everything will become public record anyway, and you'll still lose your reputation. The only difference is that you'll also lose a lot of money in legal fees. I met his eyes steadily. But you already know that. Your lawyers probably told you the same thing. So why are we really here? He was silent for a moment, studying me like I was a stranger. When did you become this person? I've always been this person. You just never paid attention. I raised you better than this. I raised you to have integrity, to respect family. You raised me to be obedient. There's a difference. I leaned forward slightly. And don't talk to me about integrity, Dad. You've been lying to me for 3 years about money that's legally mine. You publicly humiliated me to punish me for choosing someone you don't approve of. You've built your business on ethically questionable practices that you hide behind lawyers and NDAs. So please, spare me the lecture about integrity. His face flushed with anger, but he controlled it. What do you want? I've already told you. Control of my trust transferred to me today. $100,000 released for wedding expenses, and a public apology for last night. The apology is out of the question. Then we're done here. I started to rise. Wait. He held up a hand. I'll transfer the trust. Today. But I won't apologize publicly. That would make me look weak to my business partners, to the community. I can't do that. Can't or won't. Both. I sat back down slowly, considering. The trust was the important part. The money that was rightfully mine. The proof that I could take care of myself financially. The apology would have been satisfying, but it wasn't essential. The question was whether I could accept a partial victory or if I needed to push for everything. If you won't apologize publicly, I said slowly, then you'll do something else. You'll pay for the entire wedding, not just from the trust, from your own accounts. $150,000, not $100,000. And you'll attend the wedding and act like a supportive father, not a martyr who's being forced to show up. That's more than what? That's my price for not exposing you. The trust is mine regardless. That's not negotiable. But keeping your secrets costs extra. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating costs and benefits, weighing his pride against his reputation. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. Fine, I'll pay for the wedding. 150,000, my own money, and I'll attend. But Alexandria, after this, we're done. You'll get your money and your wedding, but you'll have burned your relationship with your father. We were already done, Dad. You ended it last night. I'm just negotiating the terms of the settlement. Your mother will be devastated. My mother sat silent last night while you humiliated me in front of 40 people. If she's devastated, that's her choice. I pulled out my phone and opened a document. I had my lawyer draw up an agreement. You'll sign it, transfer the trust today, and wire the wedding payment within 24 hours. In exchange, I'll keep those documents private as long as you honor your end of the deal. You have a lawyer now? I've had a lawyer for 6 weeks. Did you really think I'd threaten you without legal backup? I slid my phone across the table. Read it, sign it, or walk away and take your chances with the media. He read through the agreement slowly, his expression darkening with each clause. But when he finished, he pulled out his own phone and signed the digital document. Done. Transfer the trust. He made a call, spoke to someone at his bank, and 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Trust control transferred. Balance: $287,234.67. I felt something loosen in my chest. It was real. The money was actually mine, legally and irrevocably mine. He couldn't touch it anymore, couldn't hold it over me, couldn't use it as leverage. The wedding payment will be in your account by tomorrow, he said flatly. I expect an invitation. You'll get one, along with everyone else who RSVP'd yes before you tried to cancel everything. And those documents will stay private as long as you honor our agreement. But Dad, understand this. I still have them. If you try to interfere with my life, my marriage, my career, if you try to punish me in any way for standing up to you, those documents become public. Are we clear? Crystal clear. He stood up. I hope you're happy, Alexandria. You've extorted your own father, threatened to destroy him, and burned every bridge between us. I hope it was worth it. It was worth it the moment you lied about my trust 3 years ago. It was worth it last night when you humiliated me. And it'll be worth it for every day of my life when I don't have to answer to you anymore. I stood as well, meeting his eyes. Goodbye, Dad. He walked out without another word. I watched him go, and I waited for guilt or regret or sadness to hit me. But all I felt was relief. Clean, pure relief that it was over, that I'd won, that I was finally free of his control. Cameron was waiting in the car outside. I slid into the passenger seat and just breathed for a moment. Well? He asked. He signed. The trust is transferred. The wedding is paid for. It's done. Alex, that's amazing. You did it. We did it. I leaned my head back against the seat. But he's right about one thing. Our relationship is over. He'll never forgive me for this. Do you regret it? No, not even a little bit. I regret that it had to happen this way. I regret that my father is the kind of man who makes this necessary. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret taking what's mine. We drove home in silence, and I spent the entire ride thinking about what I'd just done. I'd blackmailed my own father. I'd threatened to destroy him. I'd chosen money and freedom over family. Those weren't small things. They were huge, life-changing decisions that would ripple through my life for years. But they were also necessary things, because my father had spent my entire life teaching me that love was conditional, that control was more important than respect, that his approval was something I had to earn through obedience. He'd taught me to value his opinion more than my own, to question my choices, to always wonder if I was good enough. And I was done learning those lessons. Now I was going to teach him something, that daughters raised to be strong and independent might actually become strong and independent, even when that strength is directed back at the father who created it. That control is an illusion that shatters the moment someone refuses to be controlled. That love without respect is worthless, and respect without honesty is impossible. My father had gambled that I loved him enough to stay under his thumb. He'd lost that gamble, and now we both have to live with the consequences. That evening, the calls started. My mother, my brother, aunts and uncles and family friends who'd somehow already heard about our disagreement. I ignored them all. Whatever they had to say, whatever guilt trips or manipulations they wanted to try, I wasn't interested. I'd made my choice. I was living with it. They could either accept that or not. It was their decision. Cameron and I spent the evening planning our wedding for real now, with actual money in the bank and no anxiety about my father pulling funding. We looked at flowers and music and menu options. We debated ceremony wording and reception layouts. We did all the normal things engaged couples do, and it felt surreal and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from Isabel, a paralegal who'd given me the documents. "I heard you got your trust. Congratulations. That took real courage." I texted back, "Thank you for the help. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You would have found another way. But I'm glad I could help. And between you and me, it felt really good to see him face consequences for once. He's been untouchable for too long. He's still mostly untouchable. I only got a piece of what he deserves. But you got justice for yourself. That matters. That's more than most people manage." She was right. I hadn't destroyed my father or exposed all his sins. But I'd gotten what was mine, established my independence, and proven to myself that I didn't need his approval or his money. I could take care of myself just fine. That night, I finally slept deeply, dreamlessly, the sleep of someone who's fought a hard battle and won. When I woke up the next morning, my phone had a notification. Wire transfer received. $150,000 from Lawrence Barrett, my father's full name, the one he used for formal business transactions. It was real. All of it was real. I had my trust, I had my wedding fund, I had my freedom. And I'd earned it not through compliance or begging, but through strategy and courage and a willingness to fight for what was right. My father had tried to teach me a lesson about money and responsibility. Instead, I'd taught him one about underestimating your children, about assuming compliance means weakness, about believing that control and love are the same thing. He'd lost that lesson badly, and I'd won something more valuable than money. I'd won myself back. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange combination of calm and chaos. Calm because Cameron and I could finally plan our wedding without the anxiety of funding being pulled. Chaos because my extended family couldn't seem to accept that I'd stood up to my father and won. My mother called 17 times in the first 3 days. I answered on the 18th call, mostly because I needed to set boundaries clearly. "Alexandria, we need to talk about what you did," she started immediately. "No, we don't. What I did is between me and Dad. You don't get a vote. He's devastated. He feels betrayed. He lied to me for 3 years about money that was legally mine. He publicly humiliated me at my rehearsal dinner. Who exactly betrayed whom, Mom? That's not fair. He was trying to teach you about responsibility. By stealing from me? By lying? By controlling me?" I cut her off. "Mom, I'm not having this argument. I made my choice. Dad made his. Now you need to make yours, accept that I'm an adult who stood up for herself, or side with someone who lied and manipulated his own daughter. But either way, I'm done apologizing for refusing to be controlled." She was quiet for a long moment. "He said you threatened him, that you had documents, evidence of things that could destroy him. I had leverage. I used it. That's what he taught me to do. Identify your opponent's weaknesses and exploit them. I learned from the best. This isn't who you are. This is exactly who I am. You just never noticed because I was too busy being the daughter you wanted, instead of the person I actually was. I softened my voice slightly. Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep Dad warm. If you can't accept that, then we don't have much of a relationship left. Are you saying I have to choose between you and your father? I'm saying you have to choose between supporting someone who lied and manipulated, or supporting someone who stood up for herself. That's not the same thing as choosing between Dad and me. It's choosing between right and wrong. She hung up without another word. I stared at my phone for a moment, feeling the weight of that conversation settle over me. I'd essentially drawn a line in the sand for my mother, forced her to take a position. Part of me hoped she'd choose my side. Another part knew she probably wouldn't. She'd spent 35 years enabling my father's behavior. One conversation wasn't going to change that. Cameron found me sitting on the couch, staring into space. Your mom? Yeah, she thinks I'm the villain in this story. Are you okay with that? I have to be, because the alternative is pretending Dad was right, and I can't do that. I won't do that. I looked up at him. Am I crazy? Am I the only one who sees how messed up this all is? You're not crazy. You're the sanest person in your family, which is probably why they can't handle you standing up to them. He sat beside me. Your father built a family dynamic where he's always right and everyone else exists to support his vision of how things should be. You refusing to play that role anymore threatens the entire structure. Of course they're freaking out. I just thought my mom would be different. I thought she'd see that what he did was wrong. Maybe she does see it. But seeing it and admitting it are different things. If she admits your father was wrong, she has to confront her own role in enabling him for decades. That's hard. Most people aren't that brave. He was right, and I knew it. But it still hurt. The wedding planning continued. With actual money secured, we could make real decisions. We booked a photographer I'd been wanting but thought we couldn't afford. We upgraded the flowers. We added an extra hour to the reception. Small luxuries that felt enormous after weeks of anxiety. But the best part was the guest list revision. Originally, my father had controlled who was invited. His business associates, his friends from the country club, people he wanted to impress. Now that I was paying with my own money that he'd been forced to release, I got to invite who I wanted. I sent invitations to Cameron's artist friends, to my college roommates my father had never approved of, to Isabel, the paralegal who'd helped me, to my grandmother's sister who'd been estranged from my father for years over a business dispute. I invited people who'd been excluded because they didn't fit my father's vision of the perfect wedding. And I disinvited exactly 3 people. My father's business partner who'd made inappropriate comments to me for years, my mother's friend who'd always treated Cameron like he wasn't good enough, and my brother's wife who'd spent the last 2 years making subtle digs about my lack of career ambition. Cameron raised his eyebrows when I told him about the disinvitations. You're really burning bridges. I'm renovating my life. That means getting rid of toxic elements. I sealed another invitation envelope. These people have spent years making me feel small. Why would I want them at my wedding? Fair point. My brother called that afternoon. Unlike my mother's guilt trips, his approach was more direct. Alex, what the hell are you doing? Getting married. Planning a wedding. Living my life. Take your pick, you know what I mean. Dad said you blackmailed him, threatened to destroy his business unless he gave you money. Dad lied to me for 3 years about a trust fund that was legally mine. I simply reminded him of the consequences if he didn't do the right thing. There's a difference. You had no right. I had every right. It's my money, Owen. My grandmother left it to me. Dad was supposed to transfer control when I turned 25. He didn't. He just kept lying about it. So yes, I took it back. And if you can't see why that was necessary, then we don't have anything else to talk about. He paid for my wedding without any of this drama. He paid for your wedding because you married someone he approved of. Someone with the right job, the right family, the right everything. He loves you conditionally, Owen, just like he loves me conditionally. The difference is that you're meeting his conditions and I'm not. That's not true. He loves us. He loves the versions of us that fit his expectations. The real us, the people we actually are, he doesn't even know us. I softened my voice. Owen, I don't expect you to understand. Your life works within Dad's framework. Mine doesn't. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm just asking you to respect that I made a choice that was right for me. By threatening to destroy him? By refusing to be controlled anymore. Call it whatever you want. He hung up, and I added him to the growing list of family members who couldn't accept my decision. It hurt less than I'd expected. Maybe because I'd been preparing for this outcome for 6 weeks. Maybe because I'd already grieved the family I'd thought I had and accepted the reality of what we actually were. That evening, I got an unexpected email from my grandmother's sister, Aunt Helena. She was 82, sharp as a blade, and the only family member who'd openly criticized my father over the years. I'd barely known her. My father had engineered a rift between them decades ago, but I'd invited her to the wedding anyway. The email read, "Dear Alexandria, thank you for the wedding invitation. I'm delighted to accept. I also want you to know that I'm aware of the situation with your father and your grandmother's trust. Your grandmother specifically asked me to watch over that money, to make sure it went to you as she intended. I failed in that responsibility when I allowed your father to cut me out of your life. I'm sorry for that. What you did took courage. Your grandmother would be proud. She never trusted your father with money. That's why she set up the trust the way she did, with specific terms he couldn't easily manipulate. She knew what kind of man he was. I think you're finally seeing it too. If you need anything, please call me. I may be old, but I'm not powerless, and I'd very much like to get to know you, if you're willing. With love, Aunt Helena." I read that email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Someone in my family understood. Someone saw what my father was and validated my choice to stand up to him. Someone wanted to know me, not the version of me that fit their expectations. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, her voice strong and clear despite her age. "Alexandria, I hoped you'd call. Thank you for the email. It meant more than you know. Your father has spent his whole life controlling people through money and fear. It's what he does, what he's always done. Your mother, your brother, his employees, they all dance to his tune because they're afraid of what he'll do if they don't. But you stop dancing. That takes real strength. Or real stupidity. I can't tell which yet." She laughed, a rich sound full of life. "Courage often looks like stupidity until it succeeds. Then it looks brilliant. You succeeded, dear. You got what was yours and you freed yourself from his control. That's brilliant. I lost my family in the process. Did you? Or did you finally see clearly what your family actually was?" She paused. "Alexandria, your grandmother worried about you. She worried that your father would crush your spirit, the way he'd tried to crush everyone else's. That's why she left you that money, with such specific terms. She was trying to give you a weapon to use against him if you needed it. She'd be proud that you had the courage to use it. I wish I'd known her better. So do I. But your father made that impossible. He couldn't control her, so he removed her from your life. Just like he removed me. Just like he'll try to remove anyone who threatens his authority." She paused. "But he can't remove Cameron, can he? Because you won't let him. No, Cameron stays." "That's non-negotiable. Good. Hold on to that. Hold on to the people who love you for who you actually are, not who they want you to be. Those people are rare and precious." We talked for another hour. She told me stories about my grandmother, about the fights she'd had with my father over the years, about her own life and choices. By the time we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I had an ally, someone who understood, who supported me, who saw the truth of what my father was. Cameron noticed the change immediately. Good phone call? Great phone call. I think I just found the one family member worth keeping. Over the next week, I started building my new life more intentionally. I had lunch with Isabel, thanking her properly for the help she'd provided. We talked about her job, about whether she wanted to continue working for people who enabled my father's behavior. By the end of lunch, I'd offered to connect her with some contacts at more ethical firms. She hugged me, tears in her eyes, and promised to start looking. I had coffee with my college roommate, who I hadn't seen in 2 years because my father had convinced me she was a bad influence. She was thriving, running her own consulting business, married to someone wonderful, living the life she wanted. Seeing her success made me realize how much time I'd wasted trying to meet my father's expectations instead of building my own path. And I had dinner with Aunt Helena, who turned out to be one of the most fascinating people I'd ever met. She'd been a pilot in her youth, had traveled the world, had built a successful import business, and had never married because she'd never found anyone who could match her spirit. She represented everything I wanted to be: independent, strong, unapologetic about her choices. "Your father hated me," she said over dessert, grinning. I reminded him that women don't need men's permission to be successful. That independence is more valuable than approval. He couldn't stand it. He hates Cameron for similar reasons. Cameron doesn't care about money or status or any of the things Dad values. He just wants to create art and be happy. Dad can't comprehend that. Some people measure life by how much they control. Others measure it by how much they experience. Your father is the first type. You and Cameron are the second. That's why you'll never understand each other. She was right. My father and I were fundamentally incompatible. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we valued completely different things. He valued power, control, appearance. I valued freedom, authenticity, connection. Those worldviews couldn't coexist peacefully. One had to dominate the other, or we had to separate entirely. I'd chosen separation, and every day, that choice felt more right. The wedding was 3 weeks away when my mother finally reached out again. Not with a phone call this time, but with a handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope and almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. "Dear Alexandria, I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to understand what happened. Your father's version of events paints you as ungrateful and manipulative. Your silence suggests you believe he's controlling and dishonest. I've been caught between those two narratives, unsure which to believe. But I realized something yesterday. I've spent 35 years believing your father's narratives without questioning them. Maybe it's time I started thinking for myself." I asked him directly about the trust. He admitted he'd been holding on to it for your own good, because he didn't think you were ready for that kind of responsibility. When I asked why he lied about it being depleted, he said he hadn't lied. He just simplified the situation to avoid confusion. That's a lie. You know it, I know it, and he knows it. But he can't admit it, because admitting it would mean admitting he was wrong. And your father has never been able to admit he's wrong about anything. I don't know if I can leave him. I don't know if I have the strength to rebuild my life at 56. But I know I can't keep pretending I don't see what he is. I can't keep enabling his need for control at the expense of our children's happiness. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you at the rehearsal dinner. I'm sorry I've spent your whole life prioritizing his feelings over yours. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved. I'll be at your wedding. I'll support your marriage. And I'll try to be better, even if I can't fix everything else. Love, Mom. I read that letter 5 times, each time feeling a different emotion. Anger, that it had taken her this long to see the truth. Relief that she finally did see it. Sadness that she'd spent decades enabling someone who'd hurt us both. Hope that maybe, possibly, we could build something real between us now that honesty had entered the equation. I showed the letter to Cameron. He read it carefully, then looked at me. "What do you want to do?" "I want to believe her. I want to think this is real change, not just guilt talking. But I don't know if I can trust her yet." "You don't have to decide right now. Let her prove it through actions, not words. If she means it, she'll show you over time. And if she doesn't? If this is just a temporary moment of clarity before she goes back to enabling him, then you'll know that too. But Alex, give her a chance. Not because she deserves it. Maybe she doesn't. But because you deserve to know if your mother is capable of being better." I called her that evening. She answered immediately, her voice tentative. "Did you get my letter?" "I got it. Thank you for being honest." "I should have been honest years ago." "Yes, you should have. But you're being honest now, and that matters." I took a breath. "Mom, I want to believe you. I want to think we can have a real relationship. But I need to see it, not just hear it. Words are easy. Actions are hard. I know. And I understand if you don't trust me. I haven't given you much reason to. Are you leaving Dad?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I know I should. I know our marriage is built on me never questioning him, never challenging him, never being my own person. But leaving means starting over at 56. It means admitting I wasted 35 years. It means being alone. Being alone is better than being controlled. I'm starting to realize that. But knowing something and having the courage to act on it are different things. I know. Believe me, I know." I softened my voice. "Mom, I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm asking you to stop enabling him. To stop pretending his behavior is acceptable. To stop choosing his comfort over our relationship. I can do that. I think I can do that. Then start by being at the wedding and being genuinely happy for me. Not performing happiness to keep Dad from being angry. Actually being happy that I'm marrying someone I love. I can do that too. Cameron is a good man. I've always known that, even if I didn't say it." "Why didn't you say it?" "Because your father would have been angry. Because I've spent decades avoiding his anger by staying silent. Because it was easier to let him be wrong than to fight him on it." She paused. "I'm tired of being easy, Alexandria. I'm tired of silence. I want to be braver." "Then be brave. It's terrifying and hard and it costs you things. But it's worth it." We talked for another 30 minutes, and by the end, I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness. That would take time and proof. But possibility. The possibility that my mother might choose to be a different person. That we might build a relationship based on honesty instead of performance. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had before. The final 3 weeks before the wedding flew by in a whirlwind of last-minute details and unexpected revelations. My mother started showing up, not dramatically, not making grand gestures, but showing up in small, consistent ways. She offered to help with wedding favors. She asked about Cameron's art with genuine interest. She called just to check in, not to guilt trip or manipulate. It was strange, seeing her act like an actual supportive mother instead of my father's enabler. I didn't trust it completely. Decades of learned behavior don't disappear in 3 weeks, but I appreciated the effort. My father, meanwhile, maintained radio silence. He transferred the money as agreed, but otherwise acted as if I didn't exist. My brother told me Dad had been devastated by my betrayal, that he was heartbroken about our estrangement. I felt nothing hearing that. No guilt, no sadness, no desire to fix things. I'd offered him a choice: release the money that was mine and face minimal consequences, or refuse and be exposed. He'd chosen the first option because he'd had to, not because he'd wanted to. That wasn't reconciliation. It was just damage control. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Alexandria Barrett?" A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. "Yes." "Who's this?" "My name is Vanessa Chen. I'm a reporter with the City Business Journal. I'm working on a story about your father's business practices, and I was hoping you might be willing to comment." My blood went cold. "I'm sorry, what?" "I've been investigating some irregularities in your father's company finances. Tax issues, environmental violations, some troubling harassment settlements. I understand you might have information about these matters." I hung up immediately and called Isabel. "Did you give those documents to a reporter?" I asked without preamble. "What? No, Alex, I swear I didn't. I gave them only to you." "I wouldn't. Someone leaked them. A reporter just called me asking about Dad's business practices." "Oh my God, who would?" She stopped. "Wait, there's another person who had access to those files. Another paralegal who was helping me organize them. I thought I could trust her, but she must have made copies or told someone." I pressed my hand to my forehead, thinking fast. "Okay, this is actually fine. The documents are going to come out anyway. I just need to control how. Alex, this could blow up in your face. If your father thinks you leaked them, he already hates me. What's he going to do? Hate me more?" But my hands were shaking. This wasn't how I'd wanted this to play out. I'd wanted the documents as leverage, as insurance, not as a public expose. I need to call the reporter back, get ahead of this. I hung up with Isabel and immediately called Cameron. "We have a problem." After explaining the situation, he was quiet for a moment. "So what do we do?" I talked to the reporter. "I confirm the documents are real, but make it clear I wasn't the primary source. I distance myself while still standing by the truth of what's in those files. Your father will know you had them. He'll know you kept them even after he paid you. Our agreement was that I wouldn't release them as long as he honored his side. I didn't release them. Someone else did. I'm not breaking our deal. That's a technicality. Life is technicalities. Law is technicalities. I'm using the same loopholes he's used for years." I called Vanessa Chen back. She answered immediately. "Ms. Barrett, thank you for calling back. I know this must be uncomfortable." "Let me be clear about something," I interrupted. "I'm not your source for these documents. But I know they exist. I know they're real. And I know my father has been hiding problematic business practices for years. If you're going to run this story, run it accurately. Are you willing to go on record?" "No. But I'm willing to confirm facts if you ask specific questions. And I'm willing to provide context about my father's character that might help you understand why he'd engage in these practices." We talked for an hour. I didn't tell her anything that wasn't already provable through public records or the documents she already had. But I filled in gaps, provided context, helped her understand the patterns of behavior that the documents revealed. "One more question," she said near the end. "Your father recently funded your wedding, after initially refusing. Was that related to your knowledge of these documents?" "My father released control of a trust fund that was legally mine and that he'd been improperly withholding. Whether his decision was influenced by any particular factors is something you'd have to ask him. That's not a denial. It's also not a confirmation. My relationship with my father is complicated and private. Your story should focus on his business practices, not his family dynamics." "Fair enough. The article will run next week. I wanted to give you advance warning." "I appreciate that." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long moment. Next week. The story would break next week. Just days before my wedding. Perfect timing for maximum chaos. I called my mother. She needed to know what was coming. "Mom, something's happening. There's going to be an article about Dad's business practices. It's going to be bad." "How bad?" "Tax evasion, environmental violations, harassment settlements, all documented, all provable." She was quiet for a long time. Did you give them those documents? No, but I had them. I told Dad I had them. I used them as leverage to get my trust back. Now, someone else has leaked them to the press. He's going to think you did it. Probably. But I didn't. And honestly, Mom, I'm not sorry it's happening. He's been getting away with this stuff for years. It's time someone held him accountable. This will destroy him. Maybe. Or maybe it'll force him to actually change. Either way, it's not my responsibility to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. When does it publish? Next week. A few days before the wedding. She laughed, a bitter sound. Your wedding is going to be very interesting. That's one word for it. Does Cameron know? Yes. He's supportive. Worried, but supportive. Good. You'll need that support. The next few weeks are going to be rough. She paused. Alexandria, I want you to know something. Whatever happens with your father, whatever comes out in this article, I'm on your side. I'm going to stand with you. Mom, I mean it. I've chosen his side too many times. I've enabled him too long. Whatever consequences he faces, he earned them. You didn't cause this. He did. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. I love you, sweetheart. And I'm sorry it took me this long to show it properly. After we hung up, I told Cameron everything. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me close. This is going to be messy, he said. I know. Your father's going to blame you completely, even though you didn't leak the documents. I know. Your brother and the rest of your family are probably going to take his side. I know. And our wedding is going to happen right in the middle of all this chaos. I know. I pulled back to look at him. Do you want to postpone? Wait until things settle down? Absolutely not. We're getting married exactly as planned. If your family wants to bring drama to our wedding, that's their choice. But we're not letting them control this day. I love you. I love you too. And Alex, I'm proud of you for standing up to him, for refusing to be controlled, for choosing your own path, even when it's hard. You're the bravest person I know. The article dropped on a Tuesday, 5 days before the wedding. A headline read, Barrett Industries under fire. Document leak reveals years of misconduct. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I knew what was in those documents. But I watched my phone explode with calls and messages from family members, from people I hadn't spoken to in years, from former friends and distant relatives who suddenly had opinions about my character and choices. I ignored all of it. My father called once. I declined the call. He called again. I declined again. On the third call, I answered. You destroyed me, he said without preamble. His voice was raw, broken. Everything I built, everything I worked for, gone because you couldn't let this go. I didn't leak those documents. Don't lie to me. You had them. You threatened me with them, and now they're public. You expect me to believe that's a coincidence? Believe whatever you want. I didn't leak them. But I'm not sorry they're out. You've been breaking the law for years, Dad. You've been hurting people. Maybe it's time you faced consequences. I'm your father. You're a man who stole from me, lied to me, and tried to control me. Being my father doesn't make you immune to consequences. The wedding is off. I'm not paying for it. I'm not attending. You've made your choice. The money is already in my account. You already paid. And whether you attend or not is your choice, not mine. The invitation stands, but if you don't come, I'll understand. How can you be so cold? You taught me. You taught me that love is conditional, that approval has to be earned, that family is a transaction where the most powerful person gets to set the terms. I learned from the best. Alexandria. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up and turned off my phone. Around me, the apartment was quiet. Cameron was out getting lunch. I was alone with the reality of what I'd done and what had been done to me. My father's business was being investigated. His reputation was in tatters. His legacy was tarnished, possibly irreparably. And part of that was my fault. Not because I'd leaked the documents, but because I'd gathered them in the first place, because I'd given someone else access to them, because I'd created the conditions for this exposure to happen. Did I regret it? I waited for guilt to arrive, for remorse to wash over me. But all I felt was tired relief. Relief that the truth was out. Relief that I didn't have to keep his secrets anymore. Relief that other people, the employees he'd mistreated, the communities he'd harmed, the women he'd silenced, might finally see justice. My father had taught me to be strong, strategic, uncompromising. He just never imagined I'd use those skills against him. That was his mistake. And now we'd both have to live in the world that mistake had created. The 3 days between the article's publication and the wedding were surreal. My phone stayed off. Cameron handled all external communication, fielding calls from concerned friends, curious acquaintances, and hostile family members. The story had gone viral in our city's business community. Front page of the business section, trending on local social media, the scandal everyone was discussing. I stayed in our apartment, finishing last-minute wedding preparations and trying not to think about the chaos swirling around us. Cameron's friends rallied around us, offering support and distraction. Aunt Helena called every day, her voice steady and reassuring. My mother texted frequently, updates on the fallout. Dad had hired a crisis management firm. His business partners were distancing themselves. Investors were demanding explanations. "Are you okay?" she texted on Wednesday. "I'm fine. Are you?" Honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. It's like the truth set me free too. That message made me smile. Maybe something good would come from all this chaos after all. Thursday morning, the day before the wedding, I turned my phone back on. There were 247 missed calls, 189 text messages, and countless social media notifications. I scrolled through them quickly, categorizing: hostile family members, ignore; concerned friends, respond later; unknown numbers, probably reporters, definitely ignore; Aunt Helena, call back; Mom, call back; Isabel, call back. I called Aunt Helena first. "Alexandria, how are you holding up?" "Better than expected." "How are things looking from the outside?" "Messy. Your father's in full defensive mode, denying everything despite the documentation. Your brother is playing the loyal son, defending him publicly. Most people aren't buying it. What about socially? The wedding tomorrow? Some people have reached out asking if it's still happening. I've been telling everyone yes, absolutely. And that anyone who has a problem with you standing up to wrongdoing shouldn't attend. Aunt Helena, don't Aunt Helena me. You did the right thing. Multiple right things. Getting your trust back, standing up to his control, and yes, even having those documents that exposed his misconduct. Some people are going to see you as vindictive. Let them. The people whose opinions matter see you as brave. I love you. I love you too, dear. See you tomorrow. It's going to be beautiful." Next, I called my mother. "Alex, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom. Really." "How's Dad?" "Furious, humiliated, spiraling. He's convinced you orchestrated everything, gathering the documents, leaking them, timing it to destroy him right before your wedding." "I didn't leak them. I know. I believe you. But he won't. He needs someone to blame, and you're the easiest target." "Is he coming tomorrow?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No." "He said he won't set foot in a wedding funded by extortion money and attended by people who've turned against him. And you?" "I'll be there, front row, wearing that dress we picked out together." She paused. "Alexandria, I'm leaving him." I almost dropped the phone. "What?" "I'm leaving your father." "Not today. I can't deal with that logistics nightmare on top of your wedding. But next week. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." "Mom, this article was the final straw. Reading about the harassment settlements he hid, the employees he mistreated, the laws he broke. I can't pretend anymore. I can't stay married to someone who's capable of that. And I can't keep choosing his comfort over my own integrity." "Are you sure?" "Completely sure." "Terrified, but sure." She laughed shakily. "You showed me it was possible. You stood up to him and survived. If my 28-year-old daughter can do it, surely I can too. You can. You absolutely can. And if you need anything, a place to stay, money, support, I'm here. Thank you, sweetheart, but I'll be okay. Your grandmother left me some money too. Not as much as she left you, but enough. I'll land on my feet. I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of you too. See you tomorrow. After we hung up, I just sat there, processing. My mother was leading my father. My family was fracturing completely. The wedding tomorrow would happen without my father. Possibly without my brother. In the shadow of a major scandal. And yet, I felt okay. Better than okay. I felt free. Cameron found me sitting on the couch, staring into space. You okay? My mom's leaving my dad. His eyebrows shot up. Wow, that's huge. Apparently the article was the wake-up call she needed. She's filing for divorce next week. How do you feel about that? Happy for her. Sad that it took this long. Worried about how Dad will react. I looked up at him. This wedding tomorrow is going to be a shit show, isn't it? Probably. But it'll be our shit show. And the people who actually matter will be there. The people who love us and support us and see you for who you really are. What if hardly anyone comes? What if everyone sides with my father? Then we have an intimate wedding with the few people who matter. That's not a tragedy. That's clarity. He was right. Part of me had been dreading walking into that venue and seeing empty seats. Seeing proof that my father's version of events had won. That people believed I was the villain. But another part of me realized that would just be information. Data about who was worth keeping in my life and who wasn't. I'm glad I'm marrying you, I said. Same. Even with all the family drama. Especially with all the family drama. Most people don't really know what someone's made of until things get hard. We've had hard right from the start. And we're still standing. That's got to count for something. We spent the rest of the day doing normal pre-wedding things. Confirming details with vendors, packing overnight bags for our wedding night hotel, trying on our outfits one last time. The mundane tasks helped ground me, reminded me that underneath all the chaos, this was still just a wedding. Two people making a commitment. Everything else was noise. That night, following tradition, Cameron stayed at a friend's place while I stayed in our apartment. Aunt Helena came over with takeout and champagne, determined to give me a proper night before the wedding experience. Tell me honestly, she said, settling onto the couch with her wine. How are you really feeling? Like I'm about to walk into a room full of people who judge me. Like my family's falling apart. Like I burned everything down to get to this point. And was it worth it? I thought about that question carefully. Yes. Even knowing everything that's happened, everything that's still going to happen, yes, it was worth it. Because I'm free now. Really free. Not pretending anymore. Not performing. Not trying to earn approval from people who'll never give it. Just free. That's all that matters. Everything else is just noise. She topped off my glass. Your grandmother would be so proud of you, you know? She fought your father her whole life. Tried to protect you from him. That trust she left wasn't just money. It was a weapon she knew you'd eventually need. I wish I'd known her better. Me too. But you're living the life she wanted for you. Independent, strong, making your own choices. That's the best tribute you could give her memory. We talked late into the night, sharing stories about my grandmother, about Aunt Helena's adventures, about the life I was building with Cameron. By the time she left around midnight, I felt centered again, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. I didn't sleep much. My mind kept spinning through scenarios. What if my father showed up and caused a scene? What if my brother confronted me? What if the guests sided with my father and the wedding was awkward and hostile? What if? But then I'd remember Cameron's words. The people who matter will be there, and I'd feel calm again. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started getting ready. Hair, makeup, the works. I'd hired professionals to come to the apartment, wanting to feel beautiful for this day regardless of the drama surrounding it. As they worked, transforming me into a bride, I watched my face in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because of the makeup, but because of the expression. I looked confident, certain, like someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted, like someone who'd fought for her right to this day and won. "You look beautiful," the makeup artist said, stepping back to admire her work. "I feel beautiful. Thank you." My mother arrived at 9 a.m. to help me into my dress. She looked elegant in the outfit we'd chosen together, but I could see the strain around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "How are you?" I asked. Terrified, excited, proud, all of it at once. She helped me step into the dress, carefully zipping up the back. "Your father called this morning, begging me not to go to the wedding, saying that showing up means choosing you over him." "What did you tell him?" "That I'm choosing honesty over lies, integrity over comfort, my daughter over my husband." She adjusted the dress, smoothing out wrinkles. "He didn't take it well. I'm sorry this is happening." "Don't be. This was always going to happen. You just accelerated the timeline." She stepped back, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Alexandria, you're stunning." I turned to look in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was a bride. Yes, but more than that, she was a warrior who'd fought for the right to this moment. Every conversation with my father, every document I'd gathered, every choice I'd made had led to this. Me, in a wedding dress, about to marry the person I loved. Free from the control that had defined my first 28 years. "Let's go get you married," Mom said, wiping her eyes. The venue was beautiful, a garden estate with flowering trees and string lights, exactly the romantic setting I dreamed of. As we arrived, I scanned the parking lot nervously, looking for signs of my father's car or my brother's. Nothing. Part of me was relieved. Another part ached with the finality of it. Inside, I hid in the bridal suite while guests arrived. Through the window, I watched them stream in. Cameron's artist friends, like college roommates, former colleagues, family friends who'd known me since childhood. Some I'd expected. Others surprised me. People who'd been friendly with my father, but were choosing to attend anyway, making a statement about where they stood. Aunt Helena poked her head in around 2:30. "It's almost time, dear. Ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Looks like we've got about 80% of the expected guests." "That many?" "More, actually. Some people came who'd originally declined. I think once the article came out, people wanted to show their support for you." She smiled. "Your father's narrative isn't winning, Alexandria. People see through it. Is Owen here?" Her smile faded. "No, I'm sorry, he's not." I nodded, swallowing hard. My brother had chosen our father's side completely. That hurt more than I'd expected. We'd never been especially close, but he was still my brother. I'd hoped he might see past Dad's manipulation, might support me even if he didn't agree with everything I'd done. But he'd made his choice, and I had to accept it. "Okay," I said. "Who's walking me down the aisle?" "I am," my mother said from the doorway. "If you'll have me." I felt tears threaten my carefully applied makeup. "Really? Really, your father should be here, but he's not. And I'm tired of letting him control these moments. So I'm walking you down that aisle, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm celebrating your marriage. Because that's what mothers should do. Mom, no crying. We'll ruin your makeup. Just say yes. Yes. Absolutely yes." At 3 p.m. exactly, the music started. Mom and I stood at the entrance to the garden, looking down the aisle at Cameron waiting under an arch of flowers. He looked nervous and excited, and so happy. When our eyes met, he smiled, that smile that had made me fall in love with him, that had made me brave enough to fight for this moment. "Ready?" Mom whispered. "Ready." We walked down that aisle together, past rows of people who'd chosen to support me, past empty seats where family should have been, past whispers and stares, and into the space where Cameron waited. Mom kissed my cheek, whispered "I love you," and took her seat in the front row. Then it was just me and Cameron and the officiant and the life we were choosing together. The ceremony was simple and perfect. We'd written our own vows, promising to support each other's dreams, to be honest even when it was hard, to build a partnership based on equality and respect. When Cameron said, "I promise to never make you choose between love and freedom," I had to blink back tears. When the officiant pronounced us married and Cameron kissed me, the garden erupted in applause. Not the polite applause of duty, but genuine celebration. These people were happy for us. They saw past the scandal and the family drama to the truth of what this day meant. We were married. Despite everything, we'd made it to this moment. The reception was held in an adjacent ballroom, decorated with lights and flowers and all the details I'd obsessed over for months. As we entered, I braced myself for awkwardness, for hostile energy, for evidence that people were uncomfortable with the circumstances. Instead, I found warmth. People approached me throughout the evening, offering congratulations and support. Some mentioned the article directly, saying they'd always suspected my father wasn't as ethical as he appeared. Others just celebrated the wedding, choosing to focus on joy rather than drama. Aunt Helena gave a toast that brought down the house. "Marriage is about partnership between equals," she said, raising her glass. Alexandria has spent her life learning that lesson the hard way, but she learned it. She refused to accept a relationship built on control and chose one built on respect instead. That's what we're celebrating today. Not just a wedding, but a woman claiming her right to choose her own life. To Alexandria and Cameron. The room erupted in cheers. I looked around at the faces, genuine smiles, raised glasses, people celebrating us. This was my community now. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd chosen and built. My mother approached during dinner, tears streaming down her face. That was beautiful. All of it. I'm so happy for you. Thank you for being here, for walking me down the aisle, for choosing me. I should have chosen you years ago, but I'm choosing you now. Every day from now on. We hugged and I felt something heal between us. Not completely. There was too much history for that, but enough to build on, enough to matter. As the evening wore on, the absence of my father and brother felt less like a wound and more like a fact. They'd made their choice. I'd made mine, and life would continue for all of us, just on separate paths. Around 9 p.m., as Cameron and I danced our first dance, I looked around the room and felt profound gratitude, not for my father's money, though it had made this celebration possible, not for the trust fund, though it had bought my freedom, but for the courage to stand up for myself, for the people who'd supported that choice, for the life I was building with someone who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. "What are you thinking?" Cameron asked. That we did it. Despite everything, we actually did it. We did. And Alex, it's only going to get better from here. Promise? Promise. The night continued in a blur of dancing and laughter and celebration. At some point, I noticed Isabel in the crowd. I'd invited her, unsure if she'd come. She caught my eye and raised her glass in a silent toast. I raised mine back, acknowledging what we'd both done, told the truth, faced consequences, survived. Around midnight, as the reception wound down, Cameron and I slipped away to our hotel. In the car, watching the city lights blur past, I finally let myself feel everything I'd been holding in. Relief, sadness, joy, loss, freedom, fear, hope. "You okay?" Cameron asked, holding my hand. "I think so. I will be. It's just a lot." "It is. But we've got the rest of our lives to figure it out together." "Together," I repeated, liking the sound of it. In the hotel room, I carefully removed my wedding dress and hung it up, already imagining how I'd preserve it. This dress represented so much more than a wedding. It represented freedom, choice, the right to live on my own terms. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Congratulations on your wedding. I hope it was worth destroying your family. Owen. I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number and deleted the text. My brother could stay angry if he wanted. I was done explaining myself to people who'd already decided I was the villain. Another text came through, this one from Aunt Helena. Beautiful wedding, dear. Your grandmother was there in spirit. So proud of you. Sleep well. You've earned it. And one from my mother. Thank you for including me today. It meant everything. I love you. And one from Isabel. Thank you for the invitation. Seeing you happy made everything worth it. Enjoy your life. You've earned it. Messages of support, of celebration, of genuine happiness for me. These were the people who mattered. These were my family now. I turned off my phone and climbed into bed beside Cameron. He wrapped his arms around me, and I felt safe in a way I'd never felt before. Not the false safety of compliance, but the real safety of being fully known and fully loved anyway. Mrs. Morrison, Cameron said softly, how does it feel? Like everything I fought for. Like freedom. Like home. Good. Because you deserve all of that and more. I fell asleep that night as a married woman, as someone who'd stood up to family pressure and won, as someone who'd claimed her own life and was ready to live it fully. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. My father would probably never speak to me again. My brother might stay angry forever. The business scandal would continue to unfold, possibly getting worse before it got better. My mother's divorce would be messy and painful. But none of that was my responsibility anymore. I'd done what I needed to do, taken back what was mine, refused to be controlled, built a life on my own terms. The rest would sort itself out eventually. And if it didn't, if some bridges stayed burned and some relationships stayed broken, that was okay too. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Your peace is worth more than someone else's approval. Your freedom is worth more than conditional love. Your truth is worth more than comfortable lies. My father had tried to teach me that money and control were power. Instead, I'd learned that honesty and courage were power. That standing up for yourself was power. That choosing your own path, regardless of who tried to stop you, was the ultimate power. He'd been wrong about so much, but he'd been right about one thing. I did need to learn about responsibility and commitment. I just learned it by committing to myself and taking responsibility for my own happiness. And that was a lesson worth every burnt bridge, every difficult conversation, every painful choice I'd had to make. The honeymoon was supposed to be 2 weeks in Italy, a trip Cameron and I had been planning for months. But the morning after the wedding, as we prepared to head to the airport, reality crashed back in. My phone turned back on to coordinate travel logistics. Immediately exploded with notifications. The story had expanded. Other employees had come forward with their own experiences of my father's workplace misconduct. Regulatory agencies had opened formal investigations. His business partners were publicly severing ties. What had started as a document leak had become a full-blown scandal that was destroying his empire piece by piece. And somehow, despite my repeated denials, the narrative had solidified. I was the vengeful daughter who'd orchestrated his downfall. We can cancel the trip, Cameron offered, watching me scroll through increasingly hostile messages. Stay here, deal with this. No, I set down my phone with deliberate care. We're going. This is exactly what my father wants, for the scandal to consume my entire life, to punish me by making me miserable. I refuse to give him that. Are you sure? Completely sure. We're going to Italy. We're going to eat pasta and drink wine and pretend the world doesn't exist for 2 weeks. And when we come back, we'll deal with whatever's left. So we went. And for 14 days, I did exactly what I'd promised. Ate incredible food, explored ancient cities, made love in hotels with views of the Mediterranean, and tried very hard not to think about the mess waiting for me back home. but I couldn't completely ignore it. Late at night, while Cameron slept, I'd check my phone. The updates were relentless. My father's company had lost 3 major contracts. His board was discussing removing him as CEO. My brother had given a television interview defending Dad and painting me as a calculated manipulator. My mother had filed for divorce and moved into her own apartment. Everything was falling apart, and I was eating gelato in Florence. The guilt tried to creep in during those late-night phone checks. But I kept reminding myself of the truth. I didn't leak those documents. I didn't make my father commit fraud or harassment or environmental violations. I didn't force him to lie to me for 3 years about my trust fund. All I did was refuse to be controlled and refuse to keep his secrets. His downfall was his own doing. Still, it was hard to watch from a distance, hard to see my family implode in real time while I was supposed to be celebrating. "You're thinking about it again," Cameron said one night, catching me on the balcony with my phone. We were in Positano, the lights of the village twinkling below us. I can't help it. Everything's exploding back home, and there's nothing you can do about it from here. Or from there, honestly. You made your choice. They made theirs. Now everyone has to live with the consequences. What if I really am the villain? What if standing up for myself was selfish and cruel and stop? He took my phone gently and set it aside. You took back money that was legally yours. You refused to let someone control you through lies. You held someone accountable for their actions. None of that makes you a villain. It makes you brave. Owen said I destroyed our family. Your father destroyed your family by being dishonest, by stealing from you, by prioritizing control over love. You just stopped pretending it was okay. But, no buts. Alex, listen to me. Your father is not a good person. I know that's hard to accept. I know you want him to be different, but he's not. He's manipulative, controlling, and dishonest. Everything that's happening to him now is because of choices he made, not because of anything you did. I feel like I should be sadder about it. Maybe you're not sad because you're finally free. Maybe the absence of sadness is actually relief. He was right. I wasn't sad about losing my father. I was sad about never really having him in the first place. I was greeting the fantasy of a loving, supportive dad, not the reality of the controlling, manipulative man he actually was. That was a different kind of loss, one I'd been mourning for years without realizing it. We spent the rest of our honeymoon trying to be present, to enjoy each moment, to celebrate the life we were building together. By the time we boarded the plane home, I felt ready. Not for easy. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but for real. For whatever came next, good or bad. The first thing that happened when we landed was my phone buzzing with a voicemail from Aunt Helena. "Welcome home, dear. Call me when you can. Some developments you should know about." I called from the baggage claim. "How was Italy?" she asked. "Beautiful. Restorative. Exactly what I needed." "What's happened?" "Quite a lot. Your father was removed as CEO. The board voted him out 3 days ago. He's facing multiple lawsuits from investors, former employees, regulatory agencies. His lawyer thinks he might face criminal charges." "Oh my God, there's more. Your mother's divorce is proceeding. She's asking for half of everything, including the house, and she's demanding full disclosure of all financial assets, which is apparently making your father very nervous. Good for her. Your brother is, well, he's taking this hard." He gave another interview where he basically called you evil, but public opinion isn't on his side. Most people see you as the whistleblower who exposed corruption, not the vindictive daughter your family is painting you as. I didn't blow the whistle. I didn't leak those documents. I know, dear. But the distinction doesn't matter to the public. You're the face of this story either way. After we hung up, Cameron and I drove home in silence. Our apartment felt smaller than I remembered, full of wedding gifts we hadn't opened yet. We refused to let your father's drama become our entire existence. Just like that? Just like that. But it wasn't that simple. Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. Reporters called, wanting interviews. A producer reached out about a potential documentary. Distant relatives sent messages begging me to make things right with my father, as if I was responsible for his legal troubles. The only family member who didn't pressure me was my mother. She called weekly, updating me on the divorce proceedings, sharing her own journey of rediscovering herself after decades of subordination. "I'm in therapy," she told me during one call, "working through why I stayed so long, why I enabled him, why I chose his comfort over my children's well-being." How's that going? Painful, but necessary. My therapist says I was in an emotionally abusive relationship, that your father's control tactics are textbook manipulation. It's hard to accept that I wasted 35 years. You didn't waste them, Mom. You survived them. There's a difference. Maybe. But I wish I'd been braver sooner. I wish I'd protected you better. You're being brave now. That counts. 3 weeks after returning from our honeymoon, I received a certified letter from my father's lawyer. My hands shook as I opened it, expecting legal threats or demands. Instead, I found something unexpected, a formal request for a meeting between my father and me, mediated by lawyers, to discuss the possibility of reconciliation and the resolution of outstanding family matters. I showed the letter to Cameron. "What do you think?" "I think it's a trap. He wants you to come talk so he can manipulate you into helping him somehow." Probably. But what if he's genuine? What if he actually wants to reconcile? After everything that's happened, after his entire empire collapsed, after he blamed you publicly? You really think he's suddenly had a change of heart? No. But I think I need closure. I need to hear what he has to say. Then I'm coming with you. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at a neutral law office, with both of our lawyers present. I spent those days preparing, rehearsing what I'd say, trying to anticipate his tactics. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully, professional but not corporate, strong but not aggressive. I needed to look like someone who couldn't be intimidated, someone who'd moved on. The law office was cold and impersonal, all glass and steel and uncomfortable chairs. My father was already there when we arrived, looking smaller than I remembered. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then he spoke. "Alexandria, thank you for coming." "Dad," we sat across from each other, lawyers flanking us like guards. The mediator, a neutral third party neither of us knew, explained the ground rules. Respectful communication, no interruptions, honesty required. Then she turned to my father. "Mr. Barrett, you requested this meeting. Please explain what you hope to accomplish." He cleared his throat, and I noticed his hands trembling slightly. "I wanted to apologize. For lying about the trust, for trying to control you, for everything. I waited for the catch, for the manipulation, for the twist. It didn't come. I've lost everything," he continued. "My company, my reputation, my marriage, my son's respect. The only thing I have left is the possibility of salvaging some relationship with my daughter. And I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed any chance of that years ago, but I'm asking anyway. Why now?" I asked. "Why apologize now, after everything?" "Because I finally understand what I lost. Not the business or the money. I understand what I lost when I chose control over connection. When I made my love conditional. When I tried to force you into a mold instead of celebrating who you actually were. You publicly blamed me for your downfall. I was wrong. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. You just refused to protect me from the consequences of my own actions." He looked directly at me. "I taught you to be strong. I just never imagined you'd use that strength against me. That's not your fault. It's mine for underestimating you." I sat back, trying to process. This didn't feel like manipulation. It felt like genuine remorse. But I'd been fooled by him before. "What do you want from me?" I asked carefully. "Nothing. I'm not asking you to help with the legal problems. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking if someday, maybe, we could try to build something real between us. Not father and daughter in the traditional sense, I forfeited that right. But two adults who share history and are trying to do better. I don't know if I can do that. I understand. But the offer stands. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." The meeting ended shortly after. My father left first, and I sat there with Cameron and my lawyer, trying to understand what had just happened. "That felt genuine," my lawyer said. "For what it's worth, I've done hundreds of these mediations. That didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like a man who'd hit rock bottom and was trying to climb back up. Or a man who's good at performing remorse," I countered. "Maybe, but Alex, you don't have to decide right now. Take time. See if his actions match his words. If he's genuinely changed, you'll see evidence over time." Cameron drove us home, and I spent the entire ride replaying the meeting in my head. My father had apologized. Actually apologized, without caveats or blame shifting or manipulation. Had he really changed? Or was this just another tactic? "What are you thinking?" Cameron asked. "That I want to believe him. But I'm afraid to. That's normal. He spent your whole life training you not to trust him. One apology doesn't undo that. So what do I do? Wait. Watch. Let him prove whether he's serious or not. And in the meantime, keep building your life. Don't put anything on hold for him." That became my approach over the following months. I didn't reach out to my father, but I didn't block him either. I left the door open a crack, not wide enough for him to walk back into my life, but open enough that I could see if he was actually changing. And slowly, surprisingly, I started to see evidence that maybe he was. He settled the lawsuits against him, taking full responsibility and paying significant damages. He publicly apologized to the employees he'd mistreated, setting up a fund to compensate them. He entered therapy and started attending support groups for people dealing with the consequences of their own behavior. He didn't contact me directly, but Aunt Helena updated me regularly on his progress. "He's trying," she reported after one of her visits with him. "Whether it'll last or whether it's genuine, time will tell. But he's putting in effort." My mother's divorce finalized 6 months after our wedding. She got half of everything, including the house, which she immediately sold. With her share of the proceeds, she bought a small condo near the beach and started taking painting classes, something she'd always wanted to do, but my father had dismissed as frivolous. "I feel like I'm discovering who I am for the first time in decades," she told me over dinner one night. "It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of you too. You showed me it was possible to choose yourself. That's the greatest gift you could have given me." My brother, however, remained hostile. He continued to defend our father publicly, continued to paint me as the villain, continued to refuse any contact. I tried reaching out once, sent him a letter explaining my side of things, offering to talk. He returned it unopened. That hurt, but I accepted it. Some relationships couldn't be saved. Some people would always choose sides rather than truth. Owen was one of those people, at least for now. The foundation I'd started to feel uncomfortable about, the Sienna parallel from my previous story, didn't happen. Instead, Cameron and I focused on building our life together. We bought a small house, adopted a rescue dog, planted a garden. I started a consulting business, helping people navigate family trusts and inheritance issues. Cameron's art career took off after a gallery show featuring his work. We built a life that had nothing to do with my father's money or my family's drama. A life that was entirely ours. A year after our wedding, on our anniversary, I finally responded to my father's request for reconciliation. I invited him to coffee, just coffee, nothing more, in a public place with clear boundaries. He arrived early, looking nervous. I arrived exactly on time, looking calm. We sat across from each other at a small cafe, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said finally. "I'm not promising anything. This is just coffee." "I understand. I've been watching what you've been doing. The settlements, the therapy, the public apologies. Either you've become a very good actor, or you're actually trying to change." "I'm trying. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying." "Why? What changed?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "Losing everything. Realizing that all the power and control and money I'd accumulated meant nothing if I didn't have real relationships. Realizing that my daughter had more courage and integrity at 28 than I'd had in my entire life. That was humbling. One coffee doesn't fix everything. I know. I'm not asking it to. I'm just asking for the chance to show you over time that I can be better, that I can be the father I should have been all along. And if I say no, then I accept that. I accept that I destroyed our relationship beyond repair. But I hope you won't. I hope you'll give me a chance to earn back a fraction of what I threw away." We talked for an hour, not about business or money or the scandal, about life, about choices, about who we wanted to be moving forward. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. But it was honest in a way our relationship had never been before. When we parted, I didn't hug him, but I didn't close the door either. "We can do this again," I said. "In a few weeks. Same place, same time. If you're still doing the work, if you're still being honest, we'll keep meeting. Baby steps." "Baby steps," he agreed. "Thank you, Alexandria, for not giving up on me completely. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, because I want to see if real change is possible." Walking back to my car, I called Cameron. I met with him. "How did it go?" "Surprisingly okay. He's either genuinely changed or he's playing a very long game. Either way, I'm willing to find out which." "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm sure that I want to try. Because if I don't, I'll always wonder if reconciliation was possible, and I just didn't have the courage to find out." "Then I support you. Whatever happens, I'm here." Over the following year, my father and I continued meeting. Slowly, carefully, we built something new between us. Not the father-daughter relationship we'd had, which was built on control and conditional love, but a relationship between two adults who were trying to understand each other. He told me about his own father, who'd been even more controlling than he was, about the pressure he'd felt to succeed, to prove himself, to maintain power at all costs. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand it. I told him about the years I'd spent trying to earn his approval, about how his manipulation had made me doubt myself, about the damage his lies had done. He listened without defending himself, without making excuses. "I robbed you of your 20s, he said during one of our meetings. "You spent that entire decade trying to be who I wanted instead of discovering who you were. I'm sorry for that. I'm not sorry. Because trying to be who he wanted taught me who I didn't want to be. It made me strong enough to stand up to you eventually. So maybe it wasn't wasted time. It was preparation. That's generous. It's not generous. It's honest. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understand you better now. And understanding is different from forgiveness." 2 years after our wedding, my mother remarried, a kind, quiet man who taught literature at a local community college and treated her with genuine respect. My father attended the wedding, sitting in the back, saying nothing, just bearing witness to her new beginning. Afterward, he approached me. "She looks happy. She is happy. for the first time in decades. I'm glad. I'm glad she found someone who treats her the way I should have. He paused. Does it get easier? Living with the consequences of your mistakes? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out myself. I looked at him directly. Dad, I'm glad we're rebuilding something. But it'll never be what it was. You know that, right? I know. And what it was wasn't good anyway. Maybe what we're building now is better. Maybe. My brother eventually came around, though it took 3 years. He showed up at my house one day, unannounced, looking tired and older than his years. Can we talk? He asked. I let him in, cautious but curious. I was wrong, he said without preamble, about everything, about defending Dad, about blaming you, about choosing sides instead of choosing truth. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. What changed? I started going to therapy, started unpacking my own relationship with Dad, started realizing that the loyalty I thought I owed him was actually just fear. Fear of losing his approval, his money, his validation. Same fear that controlled you for years. I just didn't see it until recently. And now? Now I'm trying to be better, to have real relationships based on honesty instead of performance, to be the brother I should have been. He looked at me with genuine remorse. Can you forgive me? I thought about that question carefully. I can forgive you. But Owen, it'll take time to rebuild trust. You hurt me. You chose him over me when I needed family support most. That's not something I can just forget. I understand. I'm willing to do the work if you are. Then we'll try. No promises, just trying. We started meeting for lunch once a month. Slowly, we rebuilt our relationship. Not the childhood closeness we'd once had, but something new. Something based on mutual respect instead of shared history. 3 years after my wedding, I found out I was pregnant. Cameron and I had been trying for months, unsure if we wanted children, but willing to see what happened. When the test came back positive, I felt a mixture of joy and terror. I was going to be a parent, and I had no idea how to do it without repeating my father's mistakes. I called Aunt Helena first. I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified I'll be like him. You won't be. You know what not to do. That's half the battle. But what if it's in my DNA? What if control and manipulation are just who our family is? They're not. They're learned behaviors, not genetic traits, and you've spent years unlearning them. You'll be a wonderful mother, Alexandria. You've already proven you know how to choose love over control. She was right. I'd spent my entire adult life learning to do the opposite of what my father had done. To give instead of take, to support instead of control, to love unconditionally instead of conditionally. I could do this. I would do this. When I told my parents I was pregnant, their reactions couldn't have been more different. My mother cried with joy, immediately offering support and help and excitement. My father was quiet for a long moment before speaking. I hope I get to know this child, he said softly. I hope you'll trust me enough to be part of their life. That depends on who you are over the next few months. This baby deserves grandparents who are genuine, not performative, who support rather than control. Can you be that person? I'm trying to be. Every day I'm trying. Then we'll see. Cameron and I spent the pregnancy preparing, not just practically with cribs and diapers, but emotionally. We talked endlessly about the kind of parents we wanted to be, the values we wanted to instill, the mistakes we wouldn't repeat. We read books on conscious parenting, on breaking generational patterns, on raising children to be independent and confident. What if I mess them up? I asked Cameron one night, my hand on my growing belly. You probably will in some way. All parents do, but you'll mess them up in different ways than your father messed you up. And hopefully, they'll be strong enough to stand up to you if you cross a line. That's a depressing thought. No, it's realistic. We do our best. We love them unconditionally, and we hope they turn out okay. That's all we can do. My daughter, we named her Ada after Cameron's grandmother, was born on a rainy Tuesday in October. The moment they placed her in my arms, I felt something shift inside me. This tiny human was completely dependent on me, completely vulnerable, completely trusting. I would not betray that trust the way my father had betrayed mine. My parents came to the hospital separately. My mother with flowers and tears of joy. My father with a small gift and nervous energy. "Can I hold her?" he asked hesitantly. I looked at Cameron, who nodded slightly. "Yes." Carefully, I watched my father hold his granddaughter, watched his face soften in a way I'd never seen before. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect. She is. And Dad, she'll never know the grandfather you used to be. She'll only know who you are now. Make sure that person is worth knowing." "I will, I promise." Over the following months, my father proved himself in small, consistent ways. He came to visit once a week, always respectful of our boundaries, always asking permission before offering advice. He brought thoughtful gifts, books mostly, and a college fund he set up in Ada's name. "I can't fix what I did to you," he told me one day while holding Ada. "But maybe I can do better with her. Maybe I can show her the grandfather I should have been to you when you were growing up. That's all I'm asking." My mother was an enthusiastic grandmother, babysitting regularly, teaching Cameron and me about infant care, sharing stories about raising us. One afternoon, while Ada napped, she and I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea. "You're a natural at this," she said. "Much better than I was." "I doubt that." "No, it's true. I was so anxious about doing everything right, about making sure you and Owen were perfect so your father wouldn't be disappointed. I parented out of fear, not love. You're parenting out of love. There's a difference. I'm terrified most of the time. That's normal. But you're not letting that fear control you. That's what matters." Watching Ada grow, watching her first smile, her first laugh, her first tentative steps, I felt something I'd never felt before. Peace. Real, deep peace that came from knowing I'd broken the cycle. My daughter would grow up knowing unconditional love. She'd never have to earn approval or perform for affection. She'd be free to be whoever she was meant to be. That was my revenge, I realized. Not destroying my father or exposing his secrets or taking his money, though I'd done all those things. My revenge was breaking the generational pattern, refusing to pass down the trauma, creating something new and healthy from the ashes of something toxic. On Ada's first birthday, we threw a party. My mother came, and my father came, and Owen came with his wife and their new baby. Aunt Helena came, looking frail but happy at 85. Cameron's parents and siblings came. Friends from our various communities came. The house was full of love and laughter and celebration. My father found me in the kitchen, away from the crowd. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this, for not shutting me out completely, for giving me a chance to be better. You earned it. 4 years of consistent effort, therapy, genuine change. You earned it. I just want you to know that I see what you did. Not just standing up to me, but everything after. Building a life with Cameron. Rebuilding relationships with me and your mother. Raising Ada with love instead of control. You broke a pattern that's been in our family for generations. That takes more courage than I ever had. I learned from the best. You taught me to be strong and strategic. I just applied those lessons differently than you expected. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of the woman you became, despite me, rather than because of me. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know." The party continued, and I stood in my living room watching everyone celebrate my daughter. My mother playing with Ada. My father talking quietly with Cameron. Owen laughing with friends. Aunt Helena holding court with stories from her youth. All of it imperfect, complicated, real. This was my family now. Not the one I had been born into, but the one I had chosen and built and fought for. Some of the original members were here. transformed by time and consequence into better versions of themselves. Others had been added. Cameron's family, chosen friends who'd become siblings. A daughter who represented new beginnings. Cameron found me standing there, slipped his arm around my waist. "What are you thinking?" "That my dad tried to cancel my wedding to teach me a lesson about responsibility. And I taught him one instead, about consequences, about the cost of control, about what happens when you underestimate the people you're supposed to love." Did he learn it? Eventually. Painfully. But yes, I think he did. And you? What did you learn? I thought about that question carefully. I learned that you can love someone and still refuse to be controlled by them. That protecting yourself isn't the same as being vindictive. That standing up for yourself sometimes means losing people, and that's okay. That the best revenge is living well despite everyone who tried to stop you. Good lessons, hard-earned lessons. We stood together, watching our daughter, our family, our life. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still complicated histories, still relationships that required careful navigation. But it was real, honest, built on a foundation of respect rather than fear. 5 years after my father canceled my wedding, tried to cancel it. Anyway, I stood in a home filled with people who actually loved me, not for who they wanted me to be, but for who I actually was. That was worth every difficult conversation, every burnt bridge, every painful choice. My father had expected the groom to be someone he approved of, someone who fit his vision of success. Instead, I'd married an artist who valued creativity over money and love over status. Someone who'd stood beside me through family drama and public scandal. Someone who'd never tried to control or change me. That choice, choosing Cameron, choosing myself, choosing authenticity over approval, had been my first act of rebellion. Everything else had followed from that. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabel, the paralegal who'd helped me years ago. Saw the photos from Ada's party on social media. "She's beautiful. You did it, Alex. You built the life you fought for. Congratulations." I texted back, "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." Yes, you could have. You would have found another way. But I'm glad I could help. And I'm glad one of us got a happy ending. You can have one too, you know. It's never too late to choose yourself. Working on it. Your example helps. I put my phone away and returned to the party, to my life, to the family I'd built from the rubble of the one I'd been born into. My father caught my eye across the room and raised his glass slightly, a small gesture of acknowledgement, of respect, of understanding that we'd both survived the war we'd fought and somehow emerged better for it. I raised my glass back. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. Recognition that we'd both changed, both grown, both learned hard lessons about love and control and the difference between the two. "Speech," someone called out. "The mom needs to make a speech." I laughed, embarrassed. "I'm not good at speeches." "Just say something," Aunt Helena encouraged. "This is your moment." I stood in the center of the room, holding my glass of sparkling cider, looking at all the faces around me. "Okay, quick speech. 5 years ago, someone tried to teach me a lesson about responsibility by taking away something I wanted. What he didn't realize was that I'd learned the lesson anyway, just not the one he intended. I learned that responsibility means standing up for yourself. That commitment means choosing people who choose you back. That family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, who supports you, who loves you, even when it's hard. I looked at my father. I learned that people can change if they're willing to do the work. That redemption is possible, but not guaranteed. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give someone a second chance, even when they don't deserve it. Then I looked at Cameron. I learned that the right partner makes you braver, not smaller. That real love doesn't control, it liberates. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Finally, I looked at Ada, asleep in my mother's arms, and I learned that the best revenge is breaking the cycle, creating something new and healthy from something old and toxic. Teaching the next generation that love should be unconditional, that approval shouldn't have to be earned, that they're enough exactly as they are. I raised my glass. So thank you all for being here, for supporting us, for being part of the family we chose and built. And thank you to the people who tried to stop us, because you taught us exactly who we wanted to be by showing us who we didn't. Everyone drank to that, and the party continued. Later, after most guests had left and Ada was in bed, Cameron and I sat on our back porch looking at the stars. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Any of it?" "Which part?" "All of it. Standing up to your father, the document leak, the scandal, the years of estrangement. Any of it?" "No, not even the hard parts. Because the hard parts led to this, to us, to Ada, to the life we have now. If I'd stayed under his control, if I'd canceled our wedding like he wanted, if I'd chosen peace over honesty, we'd be miserable. I'd be miserable. What if the documents hadn't leaked? What if your father had never faced consequences? I'd still have my trust fund. I'd still have you. I'd still have my freedom. The consequences he faced weren't the point. My liberation was. The rest was just karma." "Karma," Cameron repeated, smiling. "I like that. Me too." We sat in comfortable silence, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. My father's attempt to cancel my wedding, my discovery of his lies about the trust, the 42 days I'd spent planning my revenge, the documents Isabel had given me, the confrontation, the payoff, the wedding, the scandal that followed, the years of estrangement and slow reconciliation, my mother's divorce and rebirth, my brother's eventual apology, my own journey from controlled daughter to independent woman. All of it had been necessary. All of it had mattered. All of it had led me exactly where I needed to be. "Cameron," I said softly. "Yeah, thank you for being who you are, for not being who my father wanted you to be, for choosing me even when it meant choosing chaos. Thank you for fighting for us, for not letting him win, for being brave enough to stand up to your entire family. We make a good team, the best team." Inside, Ada started crying, her usual 9 p.m. fussiness. I stood to go to her, but Cameron put his hand on mine. "I've got her. You stay here. Enjoy the quiet for a few more minutes." I watched him go inside, this man who'd stood beside me through everything, who'd never wavered or doubted or tried to control. This man who'd proven that love could be simple and supportive and free of manipulation. My father had tried to cancel my wedding to save money and teach me a lesson. Instead, he taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that your peace is worth fighting for. That freedom is worth the cost. That sometimes loving yourself means disappointing the people who want to control you. And the groom he hadn't expected, the artist, the free spirit, the man who valued creativity over commerce, had turned out to be exactly who I needed. Someone who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. Someone who'd helped me become the person I was always meant to be. That was the real revenge. Not destroying my father or exposing his secrets, though I'd done both. The real revenge was living well, loving freely, raising a daughter who'd never have to fight for the right to be herself. My father had canceled my wedding to teach me about responsibility. Instead, I'd taught him about consequences. And in the end, we'd both learned about redemption. His through years of genuine change, mine through the courage to give him a chance despite everything. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better than that. It was real. And real, I'd learned, was worth more than perfect ever could be. 10 years after my father tried to cancel my wedding, I sat in my office, a converted sunroom in the house Cameron and I had bought 5 years ago, working on my third book. The first had been a memoir about standing up to family financial control. The second had been a practical guide to navigating complicated family trusts. This one was different, a book about reconciliation and whether it's possible after betrayal. Through the window, I could see Ada playing in the backyard with her little brother, Lucas, who'd been born 3 years ago. Cameron was setting up his studio in the converted garage, preparing for his upcoming gallery show. My mother's car was in the driveway. She came every Thursday to have lunch with me and spend time with the grandchildren. My phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. We talked maybe once a month now, brief check-ins and updates. Our relationship would never be close. Too much history, too much pain. But it was real, honest, better than it had been. Dad, what's up? I'm calling with some news. I've decided to retire completely, sell the rest of my stake in the company, step away from business entirely. Wow, that's big. How do you feel? Relieved mostly. I've spent 40 years chasing success and power. Time to figure out who I am without it. Any plans? Your mother and I, separately, obviously, but as friends, are planning to do some traveling. She's been talking about Italy for years. I thought maybe I'd join her for part of the trip. As friends, he added quickly. That's good. I'm glad you're staying connected. We both survived the same disaster. That creates a bond, even if the marriage is over. He paused. I also wanted to ask if Ada and Lucas might want to spend a weekend with me next month. I know we usually just do day visits, but I'd like to take them to that children's museum they've been wanting to see. Let me talk to Cameron and get back to you. But probably yes. Thank you. And Alexandria, I'm proud of you. The books, the consulting business, the family you've built. You became the person I should have encouraged you to be all along. Thanks, Dad. After we hung up, I sat thinking about how far we'd all come. My father, slowly learning to be a person outside of his business identity. My mother, thriving in her independence and new relationship. My brother, working on his own issues in therapy while trying to be a better father to his kids. Me, building a life that had nothing to do with any of them, but could include them when appropriate. We'd all survived the explosion. We'd all found ways to rebuild. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Aunt Helena had passed away 2 years ago at 87, surrounded by family, including me and my father, sitting on opposite sides of her hospital bed, holding her hands as she left. She'd smiled at both of us before closing her eyes for the last time, as if she was satisfied that her work was done. She'd helped heal the family she'd been estranged from for so long. Isabel had taken my advice and left the law firm, started her own practice specializing in employment law. We had coffee every few months, comparing notes on standing up to powerful men and surviving. The reporter who'd broken the original story, Vanessa Chen, had won awards for her investigative work. She'd gone on to expose several other business leaders engaging in similar misconduct. In a way, my father's scandal had led to broader accountability in our city's business community. Cameron called from the backyard. "Alex, come see what Ada made." I saved my work and went outside. Ada, now 10 years old and showing early signs of her own artistic talent, had built an elaborate fairy garden, complete with tiny houses and painted stones. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, crouching beside her. "Grandpa Lawrence is teaching me about landscape design," she said. "He says I have a good eye." Grandpa Lawrence, my father. Teaching my daughter skills he'd never shared with me, building a relationship with her that was healthy and supportive. That's wonderful. Are you enjoying spending time with him? Yeah, he's nice. He listens to my ideas. She looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. He says when he was younger, he wasn't very good at listening. But he's getting better. He is getting better. People can change if they try hard enough. Did you teach him that? In a way, but mostly he taught himself. I just showed him why it was necessary. Lucas ran over, covered in dirt and grinning. "Mama, look, I found a worm." I laughed and helped him examine his discovery, and for a moment everything was just simple and present and good. No complicated history, no painful past, just a mom playing with her kids on a Thursday afternoon. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Cameron and I sat in our living room, drinking wine and talking about the day. This had become our ritual. processing life together, staying connected despite the chaos of raising young children. Your dad called, I told him. He wants to take the kids for a weekend. What do you think? I think he's earned it. 10 years of consistent effort, 10 years of therapy and genuine change, 10 years of showing up and being accountable. At some point, you have to trust the evidence. You've come a long way from the woman who blackmailed her father with documents showing his business crimes. I didn't blackmail him. I leveraged. There's a difference. Cameron laughed. Okay, the woman who leveraged her father with documents showing his business crimes. Better. I leaned against him. Do you ever think about that night at the rehearsal dinner? When he stood up and announced he was canceling the wedding? Sometimes. Why? Because it was the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. Worst because it was humiliating and painful. Best because it forced me to finally stand up to him. If he'd just paid for the wedding quietly, I might have stayed under his control for years. So you're grateful he tried to cancel it? In a weird way? Yes. He thought he was punishing me. Instead, he freed me. And now we have this. A life we built together. Kids we're raising with love instead of control. A relationship with my father that's honest instead of performative. It's not perfect, but it's real, and real is better than perfect. Cameron kissed my forehead. You're better than perfect. I finished my book 3 months later. The title was After the Explosion, Finding Redemption After Family Betrayal. It was part memoir, part guide, part meditation on whether people can really change and whether relationships can survive being completely rebuilt. The book launched with a small event at a local bookstore. My father came, sitting in the back row, saying nothing. After the reading, he approached hesitantly. I read the advance copy you sent me, he said, and it was hard to read about myself through your eyes, to see how my actions affected you. But it was also necessary. Thank you for being honest about me, both who I was and who I'm trying to become. That's all I can do. Tell the truth. The chapter about forgiveness, where you say you're not sure you'll ever fully forgive me, but you can accept me as I am now. That's fair. It's honest. I want you to know that I don't expect forgiveness. What I did, lying about the trust, trying to control you, putting conditions on my love, that's not forgivable. But I'm grateful you're willing to let me be part of your life anyway. You earned it. Not through one apology or one gesture, but through 10 years of consistent change. That matters. He nodded, and we stood in awkward silence for a moment. We'd never be emotionally close. Too much damage, too many years of dysfunction. But we were honest with each other now. We could exist in the same room without performance or manipulation. That was enough. As the years continued to pass, I found myself thinking less about the betrayal and more about the aftermath. The wedding itself had been beautiful, but it was just one day. The real victory was everything that came after. Building a marriage based on equality, raising children with unconditional love, maintaining boundaries with family while allowing connection, creating a life that reflected my values instead of my father's expectations. My mother eventually remarried her literature professor boyfriend, and they bought a small house near ours. She saw the grandchildren almost daily, had become the hands-on grandmother she'd never been able to be as a mother when she was still under my father's control. My brother and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. We'd never be as close as we were as children, but we could have dinner together without tension. His own children were growing up in a healthier environment than we had, and I was proud of him for breaking patterns, even while defending our father for so long. My father dated occasionally, but never remarried. He seemed content being alone, focusing on self-improvement and his relationships with his grandchildren. He'd become a regular presence in our lives, not the patriarch he'd once been, but a grandfather who showed up for soccer games and art shows and birthday parties without trying to control anything. On what would have been my grandmother's 100th birthday, Aunt Helena's estate released a letter she'd written years ago, to be delivered after her death. It was addressed to me. Dearest Alexandria, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. You did what I never had the courage to do. You stood up to your father and won. Not just legally, but emotionally. You freed yourself from his control and built a beautiful life. Your grandmother left you that trust, knowing you'd need it someday. She knew what kind of man your father was. She hoped the money would give you leverage when you needed it most. I'm glad it did. Remember always, family is who shows up, who supports you, who loves you without conditions. Blood creates obligation, but love creates family. You've built a real family now. Keep protecting it. With all my love, Helena. I cried reading that letter, grateful for the women who'd come before me, who tried to protect me, who'd given me tools I didn't know I'd need. They'd seen clearly what I'd taken years to understand, that love without respect is meaningless, that control destroys connection, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you. 15 years after my father tried to cancel my wedding, Ada got engaged. Her fiancé was an environmental scientist who shared her passion for conservation. They were young, just 23, but deeply in love and mature beyond their years. We threw them an engagement party at our house. My father came, bringing a generous check and genuine happiness for his granddaughter. My mother came with her husband, glowing with excitement. Owen came with his family. Cameron's relatives came. Friends and chosen family came. During the party, Ada pulled me aside. Grandpa Lawrence offered to pay for the wedding. Is that okay? What do you think? Do you trust him? Yeah. He's never tried to control me or make me feel bad about my choices. He just loves me and supports me. Is that weird? That he's different with me than he was with you? Not weird. Just evidence that people can change. He learned hard lessons about control and what it costs. You're benefiting from that growth. I'm lucky then. You are. But Ada, if he ever tries to pull what he pulled with me, if he ever tries to cancel your wedding or control you through money, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood. But I don't think he will. He's different now. She was right. My father was different. Not perfect, but genuinely changed. The man who'd tried to cancel my wedding to teach me a lesson had learned his own lesson, that control is an illusion, that love can't be conditional, that the people you try to force into molds will eventually break free. At the engagement party, he gave a toast to Ada and James. May your marriage be built on respect, honesty, and genuine partnership. May you always choose each other freely, never out of obligation. And may you have the courage to build the life you want, regardless of what anyone else, including me, thinks you should do. He looked at me during that last line, and I nodded slightly. He'd learned. Finally, painfully, but truly learned. Cameron found me after the toast, slipped his arm around my waist. That was a good toast. It was. He's really changed, because you forced him to. Because you refused to accept the version of him that was toxic and waited until he became someone better. Or maybe he just aged and mellowed. Maybe, but I think it's more than that. I think standing up to him, showing him consequences, forcing him to face what he'd done, I think that saved him. Not just your relationship with him, but him as a person. That's generous. It's true. You gave him a chance to be better. A lot of people wouldn't have. I watched my father talking to Ada, showing her pictures of my grandmother, her great-grandmother, on his phone, sharing family history, building connection, being the grandfather he'd learned to be. My dad tried to cancel my wedding to save money, I said softly. He thought the groom wasn't good enough, thought I wasn't responsible enough, thought he could teach me a lesson by taking away something I wanted. And he was wrong about everything. The groom was exactly who I needed. I was more responsible than he ever gave me credit for, and the only lesson anyone learned was about consequences. But you invited him back into your life eventually. after he earned it, after he proved he'd changed. After 10 years of consistent effort, I looked up at Cameron. That's the thing about revenge, about justice, about standing up to family. It doesn't have to end in permanent estrangement. It can end in transformation if everyone's willing to do the work. And if they're not willing, then you move on without them. Build your life anyway. Be happy anyway. Prove that you never needed their approval to thrive. Cameron kissed me softly. I'm glad you fought for us. For this life. For everything we have now. Me too. Every difficult conversation. Every burnt bridge. Every painful choice, worth it. All of it. The party continued around us, and I felt profound gratitude for the journey I'd taken. From the controlled daughter trying desperately to earn approval, to the woman who'd stood up to her father and demanded respect, to the person I was now, a wife, a mother, a daughter who'd rebuilt a relationship with her father on honest terms. My father had tried to cancel my wedding. Instead, he'd catalyzed my liberation, forced me to stand up to him, given me the opportunity to prove I didn't need him to have a beautiful life. And now, 15 years later, we stood in the same room, not as controller and controlled, but as two adults who'd both grown and changed and learned hard lessons about love and family and the difference between the two. The groom he hadn't expected, the artist, the free spirit, had given me a life beyond anything my father had imagined for me. A life built on love instead of control, on respect instead of obligation, on freedom instead of fear. That was the ultimate revenge, not destroying him, but building something so beautiful, so authentic, so real, that his vision for my life became irrelevant. My father had canceled my wedding to save money and teach me responsibility. Instead, I'd taught him about redemption, and somehow, impossibly, we'd both survived to see the other side, where forgiveness wasn't required, but acceptance was possible, where love existed without control, where family meant showing up, not commanding, where the wedding he tried to cancel became the foundation for a life that proved him wrong about everything. And that beautiful, hard-won, painfully earned peace was worth more than any revenge could ever be.